Hello and welcome to Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Kayode Okikelu here in Lagos. President Muhammadu Buhari today identified some key factors standing in the way of one of his key campaign promises, that is the fight against corruption, especially in the civil service. And they include nepotism, political patronage, lack of transparency and accountability, which he says have exacerbated corruption in the civil service. Well, he was speaking during the presentation of the Excellence Awards to 44 persons and organizations who are deemed to have distinguished themselves in government and the economy. The recipients include former President Goodluck Jonathan, state governors, service chiefs, and ministers.
Public service is a public trust where officers and even employees must be accountable to the people whom they should serve at all times with utmost responsibility, integrity, loyalty, and efficiency. They are expected to act with patriotism and think out of the box in order to solve the many problems facing the people which they lead.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari speaking there. Meanwhile, in his speech during that same event, former President Goodluck Jonathan decried poor governance at state and local levels while seeking improved oversight from the National Assembly. Take a listen.
We have 36 states. And out of 36 states, from the list, 16 governors are recognized this morning. Then I ask myself, out of the 774 local government chairmen, not even one is here with us. Mr. Senate President and Mr. Speaker, that shows that the National Assembly has some work to do. Probably we need to review and look at the structure and functions of the local government.
Recall that barely 10 days ago, President Buhari had presented national honors to 449 Nigerians and those described as friends of Nigeria in the nation's capital, Abuja. Really, it's a busy day in the political landscape, and we'll be bringing you some more insights, some more, stories today. But let's bring you the big topic tonight, and this one is really important. You do not want to miss this, because after weeks of anticipation, the All Progressives Congress APC today inaugurated its Presidential Campaign Council with a manifesto which was tagged Renewed Hope 2023 at the State House. The national chairman of the party, Senator Abdullahi Adamu, asked every member to unite for the task ahead, describing the inauguration as a moment of truth and unity. Also, the Director General of the Presidential Campaign Council, Governor Simon Lalong, flanked by some of the council members, including the former national chairman of the party, Adams Oshomole, noted that the campaign will be issue-based to take Nigeria to greater heights. Well, the event was attended by President Muhammadu Buhari, the presidential candidate of the party, Bola Tinubu, and lots of other prominent members of the APC. So the APC has kicked off, you might say, its campaigns. Now, there have been issues around the composition of the campaign council, the Presidential Campaign Council, but all eyes will be on that manifesto document, the 80-page document, which was tagged Renewed Hope 2023. So let's not take too much time tonight. Let's dive into that document and a lot of issues that have been brought up. More importantly, what it means to you, how that might influence your decision in the coming months in the build-up to the 2023 presidential election. We're joined on the program tonight from our Abuja studio by Senior Advocate of Nigeria. He's the Chief Spokesperson of the Tinubu Presidential Campaign Council. Mr. Festus Keyamo is our first guest on the program tonight. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Keyamo, on the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, this is a document that has been anticipated for some time, Renewed Hope 2023. It's called the Action Plan for a Better Nigeria. Just give us well, I see you're holding it. Give us a backstory. Who is the brain, or who are the brains behind this document?
Well, thank you very much. Just to also adjust your introduction a bit about our document. We have called it an action plan, not just a manifesto. And we have done so, we have used that phrase advisedly, because we have gone beyond the ordinary and the cliche and the usual sound bites of manifesto. What we have done is to produce a document that does not only show our intention, but actually outlines the way we want to achieve those intentions. And so we have gone beyond all these other parties that...
Well, that's the same definition of a manifesto, senior advocates. It's the same definition of a manifesto.
No. Well, it is not. I will tell you.
It is. A manifesto is a written statement declaring publicly the intentions, motives, and all of its views. So essentially, you have declared your intentions, your plans, and policies. So that's what it is. Perhaps you just want to use another term, but please go ahead.
Well, but I'm just telling you why we use it advisedly. We want to take it just a niche further to show that we also have outlined the ways and means by which we want to achieve those objectives. But, you know, beyond that, you can see that this document, like we explained to Nigerians over the last few weeks, we have gone through several layers of consultations, several layers of, you know, inputs by various stakeholders. And so Asiwaju is it's a candidate that likes to carry everyone along. And so we were not in a hurry because we wanted to present to Nigerians a document that can take care of their fears, their aspirations, and what they really want to see and hear. And that is why you can see that if you look at the preamble of the document, it says that our people, the citizens of Nigeria, are the most valuable assets that we have. And that document seeks to promote the interest of Nigerians through and through. So back to your question, therefore, this document is a document that has the input of various stakeholders of our party. But then it actually reflects the vision, the aspirations, and, you know, the intentions of our presidential flag bearer, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
So essentially, he signed off on this, and Nigerians can indeed say that is his manifesto or plans, as you put it. Am I right?
This is action plan. Absolutely, he did.
All right.
He signed off on this.
Let's analyze this. Let's break it down. And since you said this, I mean, essentially, at the end of the day, he's the brain behind this in some sense. Let's talk security first, because I know it's a major topic. Why is there no mention of state police in that document? Because he had said that Arewa Joint Committee, that if elected into office as president, he essentially will give top priorities to state police and ensure that that more boots are on the ground. So if he was a brain behind this, or at least he signed off on this, why was there no mention particularly of the state police, which was one of the key promises he made at that event?
Well, you understand, too, that many presidential candidates, they just like to pander to, you know, base sentiments generally, you know. But Asiwaju has talked about decentralization of powers generally. And so this fixation about coming down to the nitty-gritties as to which part of our, you know, polity generally will be decentralized, in order to, you know, give more powers to the different, you know, component parts of the country or different levels of government. Perhaps at the time he comes to implementation and with proper consultation, don't forget that this is a constitutional matter that will involve not only a presidential, you know, executive order. It involves consultation with different stakeholders, state governments, local governments, as the case may be. And of course, it involves constitutional amendments that will also have to, you know, carry along state houses of assembly. You know, so it's not a situation, it's not a case where a president sits down, deceives the, you know, Nigerian people, or a candidate sits down, deceives the Nigerian people to say, I will do this and I will do that. It involves, and like he said in this document, a lot of consultation with the other branches of government that have the constitutional powers to carry out such reforms. Right. And by the time you take the pulse of Nigerians generally, And if that is what Nigerians want, that is what Nigerians want, we can't sit down in a campaign and assume that that is what Nigerians actually want. But if that is what they want, you can be sure that he will lead the way in that regard.
So specifically, so that we can just, get something particular from this, which do we hold on to? The statement he made at the Arawa Joint Committee that he would prioritize and essentially give top priority to state police, or the words of this document that just loosely speaks about decentralization? Which one do we hold on to?
Well, both are virtually saying the same thing. And if he says that, what he said at the Arawa, forum, is virtually the same thing, because if you want to also do state police, about decentralization of powers too. So therefore, when a candidate tells you that he will, lead the way, it's also an indication that he will also be in consultation with other levels of government and other, branches of government that have the constitutional powers, to carry out such functions. But then don't forget too that the issue of security in this document goes beyond that. There are more fundamental issues regarding security that he talks about in this document. For instance, he talks about raising a battalion to tackle terrorism. Because terrorism is just an emerging threat in our nation. The type of terrorism we are witnessing now, we have not witnessed it before. When we came in 2015, the type of threat that faced the nation was the threat of Boko Haram. And so as that threat begins to diminish, other threats are emerging, kidnappings and terrorism in other parts of the country. And so that, of course, you will know that is what he will turn his attention to.
Right.
Now he talks about raising a battalion for terrorism, well-equipped, well-trained, highly mobile, and highly motivated too, to tackle terrorism in particular and kidnapping. Now, that is an innovation in this document.
Right.
That he has mentioned. So there are more profound issues in this document regarding security.
Okay,
he also
we'll explore
talks about
that, Senior Advocate.
Our aerial
but just
power.
we're sure what to expect, are you saying that he will prioritize state police, just so we get on with that and move on to other things? Will he prioritize state police, as he said?
It is an admixture of what is this document and the sound bites you have heard from him before.
Okay. So is that yes or no? Will he prioritize
what is
state
in this
police?
document and what he has said before? He will prioritize consultation with other levels of government on that issue. He will prioritize consultations.
All right. So,
yes.
so at least we get your point on that. But let's talk about that anti-terrorism battalion. And yes, it's in that document. In fact, it speaks about improving salaries just right next to that, and the welfare of security operatives, essentially. And the question now will be, where will the funds come from? And let me give you a background, really. So we're planning to spend about 13% of our budget on defense in the coming year, 2.74 trillion. In this current year, we're spending 2.29 trillion. For next year's budget, we're looking at a 10 trillion naira deficit. For this year's budget, we're looking at close to 7 trillion naira deficit. So clearly, the gap is widening. And if you're in this government, you know how difficult it has been to raise revenue. So where will the funds come from?
Well, you've asked a very important question, and this question cuts across the entire, gamut of the document. Now, raising revenues is a very profound issue that he talks about throughout the length and breadth of this document. One, he talks about diversifying the economy, because our economy over the years has been a mono economy. It has been an economy that is based purely and mostly, on oil revenues. But then we have begun to see changes now, even with the Buhari administration, where agriculture contributed about 24% to our latest GDP. And of course, it continues to grow. Now, he talks about expanding that front of our earnings. He also talks about tax reforms in the sense that, he's not going to increase taxes. And so this document protects the poor in the sense that it says, when you have an economy that's facing challenges, it is counterproductive to actually increase taxes. What he wants to do is to use technology and also other forms of effective, collection system to collect what we are even entitled to in the first place. Because you see, the problem with taxes is that you think that, many governments in the past have always rushed, to increase taxes when we are faced with shortfalls of revenue, whereas we are not even collecting what is due to government. So what we need to do, like he did in Lagos, when he raised the revenues of Lagos from about 700 million per month to about, right now about 51 billion, is that he just opened up other vistas where they were not collecting taxes. And by opening such fronts and plugging leakages here and there, he raised the revenues of Lagos State. That's the kind of deftness he wants to bring to the presidency. And so we should be rest assured, especially those in the middle class and, of course, the very poor, that they will not be burdened again by heavy taxes. So we are going to get revenues from that if we optimize tax collection. And, of course, he talks about blocking the leakages in terms of oil theft that we have been facing, in the country over the years, plugging those, leakages and then ramping up production. Ramping up production. We are not optimizing our OPEC allocation.
Right. We'll also get to that, Senior.
I'm just mentioning all of them.
So we can lay these issues bare. Yes. I understand. We'll still come to them. Yes. It's an 80-page document, very comprehensive, some might say.
No, I'm talking about all the avenues of the raised revenues.
Yes, I know. So we'll get to that. But still on that raising revenue for security, because it's been a major issue. We want to fight security, but then we're faced with lack of revenue, at least the funds, hard cash, as they say. If these ideas, solutions are viable, why are they not being put into use for this administration?
No, it's very simple, because some of these things you need to lay the foundation first before you now begin, because at times broad-based reforms, at times, without, taking into cognizance the multiplier effects and the time it takes to implement these reforms should be taken into consideration. For instance, why do I talk about broad-based reforms? I was going to talk about the phased removal of subsidy. All along, this government had known for more than 2-3 years that subsidy has to go. But then, did you expect the Buhari administration to remove the rug under the feet of Nigerians, in one fell swoop? So these are things that are going to be gradually implemented. Now, you also talk about why is this government not doing it? This government is doing it already. Asiwaju is only going to ramp up efforts and take it to the next level. I talked about agriculture, for instance. Agriculture is contributing about 24% to our GDP now. Now, that has never happened before. In terms of our non-oil exports, yam, cocoa, and all of that now, they have gone up significantly. So this government has started raising revenues outside oil. What this document now says is that it's going to redouble those efforts. If you look at the preamble of this document, there's one phrase that was used significantly there by Asiwaju. He said, standing on the foundation laid by this government. So he's not going to break away as if, well, these efforts have not been put in place before, this foundation have not been put in place. He clearly says that they're standing on the foundation laid by this government. And that's the connection we are looking for, the connection between the Buhari government and the incoming, by the grace of God, Tinubu's government. He wants to build on the foundation, especially in critical areas where this government has succeeded.
Right.
In areas where we may be facing challenges, or by the time we hand over, the challenges have not been fully addressed. Okay. Then he has new ideas. For example, we talked about the battalion we talked about.
Yes.
To face and tackle terrorism.
We have raised that. I'd like us to veer into the economy. Since you've been talking about the economy, yes, I'd like us to veer into it. But so essentially, you're saying that the Buhari government is the foundation, laid a foundation. So, absolutely. I mean, using that analogy of a building, what will the Tinubu government then, what point will they take it to? Is it the lintel level? Is it the first floor? What will the Tinubu government do to that foundation, since you're using the analogy of a building?
Well, it's simple. It's just to begin to build on that foundation. And you cannot say that, I'm not saying that in the air. There are critical areas we need to look at. For example, look at power. In the area of power, for now, the average consumption is about 4,000 megawatts. Now, this government has laid a foundation for the power sector. What is that foundation? There are critical assets, critical infrastructure that are being built as we speak. And those assets will be completed before we hand over in May 2023. What are those ones? You talk about the Zungeru Hydro. You talk about the Hashim Mambila also Hydro, and some other ones. Now, these are critical assets that are being developed right now that will bring in about extra 4,000 megawatts into the national grid. Now, by the time Asiwaju takes over, his plan for power is to then begin to concentrate on the distribution network. Because the problem is generation and distribution. And of course, you have the problem of billing too, and adequate collection of consumption. So this is therefore a kind of foundation that he can then build on, because the infrastructure will be in place. I'm just giving one example.
Okay.
The other example is in the situation of area of agriculture.
All right. Because of time,
agriculture, this government,
pardon me, you can land on that point, just to be fair. You can land on that so we can move into other things.
Now, in area of agriculture, what the president did, what President Buhari did, was very far-sighted. When he came, he said, we have to be self-sufficient in food production. We're almost achieving that. And for example, we are the greatest producer of rice in Africa now. Now, if President Buhari had not done that, we would have been in big trouble now, because you now have production and disrupted all over the world because of the Ukrainian war and so many other things disrupted all over the world now. So critical essential items and their production are disrupted all over the world.
Well, Senior Advocate, go into the markets, for example, to buy food items that are not brought from Ukraine, by the way. You would see that they're really expensive, and some will wonder, how is the Ukraine situation, how does it really impact on the price of tomatoes, for example, the price of yam in the market, which are all tied to agriculture. But just a minute, Senior, because we need to move into the economy.
I need to respond to that. I need to respond to that. But I need to respond to that. You made a point, and you can't run away from that. Do you forget that tomatoes does not move from Kano to Lagos by magic? You use diesel to move it. What is the cost of diesel now? And so the cost of transportation will affect the cost of these goods. So please, we must educate Nigerians correctly as to what is happening, and don't behave. We should not deceive Nigerians like the opposition, not you, like the opposition does, to tie campaign only to cost of prices. So there's a multiplier effect in some of these things. Transportation of goods and services is key, especially goods, is key to determine the price of goods.
Which raises the question then.
Even though we are self-sufficient in local production, but moving the goods from place to place is affected by the cost of diesel and the cost of transportation. And
this the more raises the question, and I think you are even still pushing the buck to the table of government. So what is the government doing to ensure that the cost, the inflation is brought down, that people can go to markets and at least their living wages can help them earn a living for real? So I think you have raised that question yet again. If these ideas are really viable, why aren't they put into use such that the price of the goods in the markets are at least affordable for the average Nigerian?
Now let's go back to this document now. Now, Asiwaju says he wants to build an economy that is not dependent on the vagaries of world economy. And that is the final dream, that's the eventual dream of an Asiwaju. If you look at this document, it says, little by little, we want to save Nigeria and protect Nigeria from the headwinds of international politics and economy. How do we do so? That over time, and which is Buhari administration has started, over time, we are going to concentrate on producing internally all essential items that we depend on. Food and basic items. And we are going to stop importation of luxury items so that we are going to look internally to produce these items. So that whatever the vagaries of world economy or politics about, we are going to have an economy that is protected from these headwinds. So that is the dream of an Asiwaju, and he had done it. Don't forget that.
All right, Senior Advocate, I'd like to come in now so we can cover more ground on this conversation.
From even other states in the country.
I understand. Just so we can cover more ground. It's not every day we have you on the show, so I'd like us to maximize this. I noticed something very interesting in that document. Student loans, and I mean, that is really ambitious, especially for people who have stayed outside of the country. They know how it is. Yes, it's controversial in some areas. The U.S. trying to get that burden off the neck of students and all of that. But at least for a nation like Nigeria, what we have seen in the education sector, some might think, wait a minute, it's a good idea because we've seen it in the past during the military regime. But then a lot of people remember this statement that the presidential candidate made in 2015. Take a listen.
We will give you student loan. Our program, 4 years will be 4 years. You will not extend before 4 years to graduate in a university. By the time, on your 4th year, you will be taken through that critical part.
Senior Advocate, where are the student loans today? That was in 2015.
I think the roadmap and the foundation is being laid. Let me tell you why. Because, you see, you also need to ramp up revenues first and make them available for people and for students to tap into that revenue base. And that's where we're talking about revenue now, how to ramp up those revenues. Don't forget that when we came in 2015, and this is a significant point I want to make, I want everybody to fact-check me as I speak. In 2014, no less a person than Okonjo-Iweala, who was then Minister of Finance, told everyone that we're headed to recession. So it's not we did not give that excuse. It was a PDP government that said at the time they were living that the country was on a downward slide towards recession. And that was in 2013 and 2014. Now, what happened, therefore, was that we came in and met that recession, and then the country slid into recession. But because of the deftness of the handling of the economy, we came out of the recession faster than even the IMF predicted. And also the second recession, we came out faster than it, they predicted. That we now met low oil production that dropped to 700,000 barrels per day, at times 600,000 barrels per day, when we should have been on 2.3 million barrels per day. We met those problems on the ground. So there was a problem of revenue, but the dream remained alive. The dream to fulfill these promises are still alive today as we begin to ramp up our revenues and rescue the economy from where PDP left the economy. And that is where we are now. So you can see that
a couple of issues.
The sound bites.
Right.
The sound bites you just played now shows the... Yes, go ahead.
You can land quickly just because of time. You said it shows the...
The sound bite you just showed now is a further promotion of our candidate because it shows his consistency of thought.
All right, so let's break it down.
He talked about it then in 2014.
Let's break your response down.
He's talking about it now too.
Right, so let's break your response down.
Thoughts.
You said that the former Minister of Finance said in 2013 that there was going to be a recession. Your candidate made that statement in 2015 January, being aware of those statements made that Nigeria was getting into recession. Yet he made that promise to thousands of young people, in fact, maybe millions who were listening at that time. So that's on the one hand. So if he made that promise at that time, it's almost 8 years now, no students loan. What is the assurance, really, that the one he's making now, that in 7 years to come, there will be a reality? And you said that your government meant 700,000 barrels of crude at that time. Well, that is not true, at least according to the OPEC figures. This government was doing, as at May 2015, was doing between 1.6 million and 1.9 million barrels per day.
By the end of 2015, production dropped. Go and fact check me. End of 2015, early 20, there was disruption in production in the Niger Delta region. So everybody can fact check me. It dropped.
You said it dropped to 700,000, and I'm giving you the figures of what your government meant when you came in. 1.6 million, 1.7 million. In fact, the price of crude at that time, when your candidate said he was at the lowest, was about $60-something. Not at the lowest. The lowest has been $25 in the 20 years that we've seen.
So, I'm telling you to fact check me that when we came
I just did that when you came in, it wasn't $700,000.
But you were saying May. You are mentioning May 2015.
And I gave you June as well. June was 1.7
and I'm telling you that.
That's when you came in. If you're not taking May, I'm giving you June.
Over.
Yes, so June is 1.7 million barrels per day.
Yes, yes. When do you plan your budget? When was our first budget planned? Our first budget was a 2016
is
budget.
Pointedly at the statement you made that you made $700,000 per barrel. Sorry, 700,000 barrels per day.
It dropped. No, don't misquote me. When we took over, it dropped to 700 because of disruption of production. And I want everybody to fact check you and I.
I just did. I just gave you the figures when you came in, but in order not to belabor the point.
I'm telling you that the budget. Look, listen. The first budget we planned was a 2016 budget, and that 2016 budget was based on $700,000 production, and oil price based on $30-something per barrel. That was the first budget we planned. So that 2015 was not our budget.
Okay, so you're essentially shifting it from when you came into government to when you planned the budget, because your statement was we met 700,000
Well, I'm not shifting it. You are the one shifting it, because
no, those were your words actually.
No,
earlier
you are the one shifting it. You are the one shifting it. You are the one shifting it because essentially our budget when we came in is when we planned our budget. Our budget was based on 700,000 barrels per day, and production and oil prices had dropped to about $30-something per barrel. Go and check.
Well, based on the statements you made, I at least gave you the facts on ground. But the point also is that he made that promise then that you would have student loan, and he was specific. I mean, yes. And you listened to him. So if it didn't happen when he promised then in 2015, this is 2022. It looks like it won't even happen anyway. How are we sure that we can hold on to his words this time around?
Because we're not talking about a situation where we had laid a foundation to the point where we are going to now have more revenues. And the pathway to have those revenues have been clearly laid. You cannot meet those demands or those expectations without revenues. And I just told you that the vagaries of local disruption of production and international headwinds that we had to face disrupted revenues. So it's a matter of fact. I'm stating.
All right. So, I mean, just to be fair, Senior Advocate, will he be apologizing then to Nigerians for the promise he made that has not come to fruition?
No. Do you have to apologize to perhaps force majeure? When you have a force majeure, you don't apologize. Those are force majeure.
Well, I think a lot of people will say at least it's as a leader who made a promise to people. I mean, it's only fair to say, well, we promised this, but we apologize, we couldn't do it because of these reasons. Because, I mean, you respect the people.
Hold on. Let me first of all ask you, do you know what they call force majeure in contract law and law?
I imagine that's a rhetorical question, Senior Advocate.
No, it's not rhetorical. Let me explain what force majeure means. Even when two people are in a contractual
obligation, I think we all do. The question is just basically...
But you're interrupting me.
No, because of time. I think it's actually a general term that a lot of people understand.
You cannot ask something and run away.
I'm not running away. It's because of time. My question was, would he apologize to Nigerians? And you didn't answer the question.
I said when you have a force majeure, I said when you have a force majeure.
So essentially, he doesn't need to apologize.
You don't even need to. You are not.
All right, no problem. Noted.
I said when two people are in a contractual obligation.
I'd like to ask you one more question
happens, nobody's liable to the other. Well, you're not listening to me.
I apologize. You've answered the question. I just need to ask you one more.
No, you have not answered it.
Well, you've answered that question. We understand that force majeure is an unforeseeable circumstance. I'm just trying to save time.
Exactly.
But on a final note,
when people are in a contractual obligation, they are not liable when force majeure happens.
All right. So on a final note, I'd just like you to respond to this. I know it's always quite interesting having a conversation with you, with your background in law, I mean, human rights advocate and all of that. But another statement that he made at that time, and this was particularly about former President Goodluck Jonathan's tenure, was that Jonathan and his government are stealing 400,000 barrels of crude oil every day in Nigeria. Now, he made this statement in Oyo State during a campaigning, the usual campaign. And then he made that statement then. Right now, crude oil theft is still a major issue. At least we did 900,000 barrels, according to the president, just recently. So, again, would we say that this government is then responsible? If he said that Jonathan's government was responsible then, was there even any proof?
You have just made my day. Because this recent discovery of the pipe that they laid to steal crude oil, they said it was established 9 years ago. And we just, out of shrewdness and astuteness, we just discovered that pipeline now. So who was in government 9 years ago when that pipeline was established? You answer it to the Nigerian people. Kayode, tell the Nigerian people who was in government 9 years ago.
Well, you are the spokesperson of the Presidential Campaign Council, a senior advocate, and I imagine that, you'll be doing that. But we'd like to thank you so much for your time on the program. Clearly, we'll have more time to take a look at this document. It's a very interesting one, and the coming days will be quite instructive. Thank you so much, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Festus Keyamo, for your time on the program tonight.
I can't wait to come back to discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, let's go on a break now, and when we return, we'll bring you a party which is presenting itself as a viable alternative to Nigerians. We'll explore the policy plans and chances of a social democratic party with its presidential candidate, Mr. Adebayo Adewale. That's the moment. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to the program. There are lots of options for Nigerians to choose from in the 2023 presidential elections. 18 candidates in all, each promising to be a viable alternative with plans for you and I, as Nigerians. We'll speak with one of them tonight on the program. Our second guest is Mr. Adebayo Adewale, who is a presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party, SDP, and founder of Captain TV. He joins us live from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, just maybe a detour. The APC just unveiled its manifesto, Renewed Hope 2023, and it sounds really like a play on the Hope 1993 slogan of the late MKO Abiola, who was a candidate of the SDP at that time. And I wonder for you, do you think maybe this is taking the wind out of your sail?
No, this is them plagiarizing and borrowing slogans they don't understand. You could see that they were running on something differently, and then we were running on Hope Again 2023, and then they just thought that maybe ours is fancier, and you could see how bipolar they sound when they talk about their program.
Right. So essentially, I don't know if you'll be using Hope because it looks like it's been taken already. Let's talk about your party now and your candidacy. I know that over time, or recent times, we've seen various polls which have come out ranking the top 3 candidates, and your party has not been in the top 3. I wonder first how you're handling that. Where would you place yourself in this race, perhaps to begin with?
Okay, we will continue to do Hope Again 2023. That's our slogan, and our hope is based on farewell to poverty and insecurity. And if you see the copycats, you see how they're struggling in front of you, denying even that today is Friday, and denying reality. So it's like they are aliens. Maybe aliens produce concussion. That's what they brought out. So that will not distract us. We will face our own. And as per the rating, we looked at various polls and rating. We haven't seen the background figures. We see that our membership is increasing. We see that people are listening to us. We were at the Arewa House, and we made a very good case, and we saw that people are responding. And even before then, we've been in various places. So we're not perturbed. The campaign had just started, and they will start to unravel as they unravel before you this evening. And you also notice that I'm speaking for myself. I'm being held responsible. Many of them are in hiding. Some have run abroad. They are in Paris and other cities and sending spokesperson to come on air and start giving you reported speech and supposition. But we are here to answer the question by ourselves. So we believe that Nigerians will listen to the person who's actually going to be sworn in to discharge his obligation, rather than a hired hand who's actually repeating something they don't understand.
Well, this will particularly be about your plans, your party's plan, your candidacy's plan for Nigerians. You've called it Hope Again 2023. I hope people won't get confused. Renewed Hope, Hope Again. There's hope, clearly. What does this entail, this Hope Again manifesto, this plan, this policy that you're presenting to Nigeria? What does it entail?
Okay, when we do our manifesto, our plan, and we have a manifesto night for the Social Democratic Party, people will see clearly that the parody that they are seeing now on the other side is far flung from what we have. But basically, what we're saying is exactly what we said 30 years ago, that you need to eradicate poverty. People are struggling with the idea of poverty alleviation, amelioration. We say we need to get rid of poverty. And how do you do that? We need to follow Chapter 2 of our Constitution, which obligates us to, one, make sure that people have food. And you will see that without food, everyone is poor. So we need to deal with food, and our plan has how to deal with food supply and make food and nutritional poverty to go away. We need to deal with housing. We need to build 1 million houses in every state every year throughout the life of the administration. Jakande did it in Lagos, Shagari and Wahab Dosumu tried to do it at the federal level, so it can be done. That's easy to do, and people, when they have good housing and good nutrition, they won't be poor again. We need to deal with primary health care. We need to invest money in primary health care to see that people don't have simple communicable diseases, they don't have childhood diseases, maternal mortality goes down, and people have access to intervention at the community level. Once you do that, poverty will go away. Once you have to deal with the issue of giving people employment, you do employment through agriculture, you do employment through infrastructure, you do employment through social services, you do employment through education. And education itself will also bring additional skills. These are things we can do. These are low-hanging fruits that we can easily pluck. We don't need to go outside looking for anything. Our government will not do esoteric projects. We will not do highfalutin projects. We will deal with it. And how do we finance that? We finance that by blocking the corruption and the theft. Remember that we, Social Democratic Party, when we launched our campaign, we were the one who drew attention to the fact that 80% of our crude is being stolen. Until then, the government was blaming COVID, they were blaming international community, they were blaming global market, recession. We said, no, the oil is being stolen. That is why you're not getting the money. And when we raised that point for 5 months, then the government started to acknowledge it. Now they're magically discovering things which market women, housewives, everybody knows that these pipelines are there. And this pipeline, they say it took them 9 years, 7 years to discover. Everybody in the creek, farmers, everybody knows that these pipelines are there. I myself have discovered that pipeline long ago. I've discussed that with the PDP government when they were in government. I've discussed it with this government when they are there. So they are just discovering something suddenly. That's not correct. And what they claim to be discovering now is not even where most of the theft is taking place. A lot of the theft is taking place in the ultra-deep platforms where ordinary people can't go there. You have miles and miles of nautical navigation to do, and they are stealing the crude. And the same people who are selling the official crude are also the ones selling this, and they are selling to the same customer by and large, so in the same market. So they cannot say they're just discovering that. So in our government, that will not happen. And I tell you, in addition, I'm doing another study now. I found out that in Nasarawa, in Benue, in Kogi, in Zamfara, in Osun, in a few places, solid minerals worth trillions of naira are also being stolen. And with government officials escorting foreigners with police and all of that and giving them security. So this grand theft, federal, that they are doing is the reason why we can't have a good budget. That's why they have 50% hole in the budget that they have now, and we will not have it. The same reason is the reason why many people are getting waivers. Do you know that the size of our deficit this year is less than the size of the tax waivers that the government has given? So all of these things are the reasons why we cannot make investment in critical sectors of the economy. That's why poverty sticks around, and that's why we're going to kick poverty out.
I'm just curious.
Well laid out. Unlike the other plans you have seen, which are just bland statements, our plan will come with figures or the source of fund. You will see when we bring our plan out.
So I'm really curious. You said you actually discovered the parts where the oil theft was going on. Am I right? How did you discover them?
Just by, if you want to be commander-in-chief, you need to start to find out what's going on in the country. I started asking people, even people in the Senate, Senate Committee on Finance, people on the NMPC board, different people, asking them questions. Why are you not remitting money? What is happening? What happens? Everybody says, we don't know. So until we started talking about it, you can go back and check the tapes, you can go on YouTube. I started mentioning it. Well, the first broadcast I made was to say, don't let anybody lie to you. Anyone who tells you there's no money in government is your enemy. There's money in government.
Oh, no, I thought you meant that you personally discovered these locations. That's what I thought you meant, that you personally discovered the locations and the sites.
What I'm telling you is that these sites are not a discovery. I'm not Mongo Park. Anybody in Niger Delta goes around, sees them. People see them. Just like those who are stealing crude to make diesel by the side, those who are stealing crude to take them overseas to sell, people know. The government keeps discovering things that people already know. People know that the government people are doing it, so they cannot say that they have suddenly discovered it. I knew it. Many people know it. If you go to the Niger Delta and go to the communities where these pipelines are located, these pipelines are old. We know where they are. We know the trunk line. We know where they're located. They're not new. Let me tell you something. When President Shagari was Minister of Finance under Gawan, he went to these same pipelines and discovered that the flow stations did not have meters. And he made an order that they must put meters on them and to have them metered. That was Shagari in the 1960s.
Okay,
so
let's wind down on this.
Mid-1970s. So nobody can say that they just discovered. I knew, but I raised the alarm because they were stealing a minority and reporting majority. But suddenly, when I discovered that they were stealing majority and reporting minority, I discovered that it was time to shout.
We need to wind down in about just less than 1 minute. Perhaps you also be willing to give some information to help the government. If you say that, I mean, there are other areas that have not been found. Perhaps you'll also be willing to facilitate in ensuring that we nip this on the bud. But on a final note, I want to take you up on and I know you've not released your manifesto, but let's help Nigerians get a sense of your plans. And this is on education, which is really vital, seeing what has happened with the public universities over the past 8 months. And there's been that controversy. Subsidize public education, especially public universities, or not. Allow them charge, appropriate rates in court. What is your stance on this? We have just about less than a minute to wind down, but I'd like to know, what is your stance on funding of public universities in Nigeria?
2 parts. I have information for the government right now. That's the first part of your question, to volunteer to them. And the information is this: your people in government are stealing Nigerian oil. Stop it. That's the information I can give to the government. Now, regarding education, education is a right in this country. And anyone who is talking about whether we should subsidize or whatever, education is not petrol. Education is a right we have to give to every citizen, and we have money for it. Ask anyone who is in government today, how much did they pay when they were going to school? How much did President Buhari pay to the military school, or when he was going to the military? Did he pay any amount? How much did he pay secondary school or primary school? We have the money. We need to spend the money where it needs to be spent. If the amount of money being stolen through crude oil, through solid minerals, through taxation, through waiver, through excessive procurement and inflation of contracts, if 10% of that is given to education, we will have the best education in this country. It will be available to every child. This is deliberate. This money is not scarce. What is scarce is compassion. And we have to bring a government of accountability and compassion. There's no need to beat about the bush.
Well, Barrister, what is also scarce for us is time on the show tonight. And perhaps we'll do this in the future when you eventually release a document that we can hold on to and analyze. But in the meantime, we'd like to thank you so much for your time on the program. We're speaking with Mr. Adebayo Adewale, who is a presidential candidate of SDP and also the founder of Captain TV. Amen to that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, that's been the program for tonight, everyone. We'll continue this. It's an ongoing conversation. The political season is ripe. So stay with Channels Television for the best analysis and the very latest. I'm Kayode Okikelu. Good night.